Hi everyone, welcome back to USCIS Analysis. This is the update for February 21st, 2023 regarding the processing times for the I-129F petition for alien fiancé by USCIS, and this time I have some great news to share. But first, let me give my usual disclaimer. I am not affiliated with USCIS and I am not an immigration lawyer. I'm an engineer and I created a bot that extracts data from the USCIS website because I wanted to better understand the situation regarding my own application. While my application was approved around 6 weeks ago, I've realized that this data can be very helpful to others, so I wanted to continue to share it with all of you. So here's the good news. Over the past 4 weeks, USCIS has shown a huge increase in the number of cases processed. On average, they've been able to close an incredible 980 cases per week, which is more than double the average for last year. As we'll see, this is more than the 800 or so cases per week that USCIS received in 2022, so USCIS is finally starting to reduce its backlog of cases. This chart shows the number of cases that have already been closed by the California Service Center each week for the past year. Cases that were approved are shown in green, cases denied are shown in red, and cases withdrawn by the applicant are shown in gray. USCIS has been approving around 88% of the I-129F cases recently, a bit less than last year. Let me briefly mention that this analysis only looks at applications being processed at the California Service Center because the vast majority of I-129F applications end up there. Also, in this video, I mainly refer to cases by the date that they are received by USCIS. This date is explicitly mentioned in the notice of action that USCIS sends after you submitted your case. This chart shows the number and status of cases that received a so-called NOA2 from the California Service Center last week. NOA2 refers to the first notification of action after a case is received. This action is usually either approval, shown here in green, denial, shown here in red, or some request for additional information, shown here in yellow. From this chart, we can see that the California Service Center is currently processing cases that were received between November and December of 2021, although there are a significant number of cases as old as September of last year that are only just now receiving their NOA2. In other words, the California Service Center is processing cases that were received around 14 to 17 months ago, which is in line with the 15.5-month processing time estimate on the USCIS website. It's also important to note from this chart that USCIS does not process all cases in strict order, but rather over a window of around 4 months. This chart shows the statuses of almost all of the I-129F cases that were received by the California Service Center over the last 20 months or so. Here, blue indicates the number of cases that are waiting for NOA2 from USCIS. In total, there are more than 50,000 cases still waiting for some notification from USCIS. It's interesting to see that there's been a decline in the number of applications recently. Note also that, as I mentioned earlier, USCIS received around 800 cases per week in 2022. This chart shows the percentage of cases that have received NOA2 so far. Basically, cases that are more recent than December of 2021 have not received any notice yet. Also, a significant number of cases from September and October of 2021 are still waiting for NOA2. Again, this chart indicates that USCIS does not work cases in strict order, but rather over a window of around 4 months. Here is some more detail for cases that were received around August to December of 2021. This chart shows the percentage of the cases that have already received NOA2 for each receipt date. The bars are color-coded by the week that USCIS issued the NOA2. Light violet indicates last week, and then backwards in time through blue to green to yellow to red. Dark red indicates that the NOA2 was issued 10 weeks ago or earlier. I don't know why, but there are several days in which USCIS seems to be particularly late at processing cases. I'm circling these dates in green. If your case was received on one of these days and you haven't heard anything yet, hang in there. There are others in the same situation as you. Here are some projections for the I-129F cases that were received in 2021. This is assuming that USCIS continues to close cases at their current pace. As we've seen in the data, USCIS doesn't process cases in strict order, but rather over a window of around 4 months. Because of this, I'm showing two projections, a 50% probability and a 95% probability. For example, for the cases that were received on December 20th, 2021, based on the current pace that USCIS is processing cases, I expect that 50% of the cases will be processed by February 26th and 95% of the cases will be processed by May 7th. Here are some projections for the I-129F applications that were received in early 2022. Given the recent improvements from USCIS, these projections have shortened by 1 or 2 months since my last update video. If USCIS can improve even more, then I expect that these projections will shorten even further. Here are some rough projections for cases that were received more recently. These projections are so far away that they're a bit unreliable. Given the recent improvements from USCIS, these projections are several months shorter than they were in my previous video. Let's hope that USCIS continues to improve and these projections shorten even more. So, here are the key takeaways from this data mining and analysis. First, USCIS is currently processing cases that were received around November and December of 2021, although there are still a significant number of cases from September and October that are still waiting for some notification as well. If your application was received around the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022, then your wait is likely to be between 14 and 17 months. Second, the backlog of I-129F applications is currently more than 54,000 cases. In 2022, USCIS received around 800 new cases per week and is currently closing an impressive 980 cases per week. This means that USCIS is finally starting to reduce their backlog of cases, and processing times should slowly start to decrease as a result. Last spring, USCIS announced the goal of reducing processing times to only 6 months by October of this year. At the moment, while they are improving, meeting this goal seems pretty unlikely. Please consider writing to your or your sponsor's senator and congressman to put more pressure on USCIS to further improve this situation. The more people speak up, the more pressure there will be for the politicians to act. Links to finding the contact information for your senator and congressman are in the description below. Finally, let me give an update about the process following the I-129F approval. Upon approval, USCIS will physically mail the case documents to the National Visa Center in New Hampshire. Since it's on the opposite side of the country, it takes around a week for the documents to arrive. According to the National Visa Center website, on Monday of last week, the National Visa Center was processing cases that arrived on January 12th. In other words, the National Visa Center has a backlog of about 1 month of cases. This is actually a big improvement because just a month ago, the backlog was 3 months. After the National Visa Center starts processing a case, they send a welcome letter that includes a case tracking number. My particular case was approved by USCIS on January 6th, so I assumed that the National Visa Center received my case around January 13th. That means that I should receive my welcome letter this week if the National Visa Center website is correct. I'll give a short update video once I receive it. Anyways, the point is that the time it takes between I-129F approval and receiving the National Visa Center welcome letter is currently somewhere around 6 weeks, I think. Also, I think that this wait time is improving. I'll let you know when I have some more information to share. I really hope that you found this information useful so that you can better plan your future with your soon-to-be spouse. If so, please help me spread this information to others by giving a like to this video. Also, thanks to everyone who leaves comments. It's been very motivating and helps me to improve these videos. Finally, I'll definitely continue to track this situation, so please consider subscribing to keep up with the latest. Thanks!